Nightmare on Christmas is an episode of Ultimate Spider-Man, an animated series originally from Disney XD, I think. And it's a bit of a mess. I wasn't exactly sure what to expect going into this episode because from what I'd seen online, I'd seen the description, Spider-Man is taken into his past, present, and future, and I was like, oh, okay, Christmas Carol, great. And then I also saw Spider-Man sees what his life would be like without Spider-Man, and I was like, oh, so actually it's a wonderful life? And then the title is Nightmare on Christmas, so I was like, Nightmare Before Christmas? So I was like, what's the vibe here? And it's more Christmas Carol, I think, than any of the other things. So essentially, Spider-Man stops Shocker from doing a crime. Shocker calls himself Scrooge because they have to get really obvious with the Christmas references. And then he goes back to the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, and all of his friends have gone. He asks Squirrel Girl, who's asleep, hibernating for the winter, and she says, oh yeah, they have a change of plans. They told me to tell you, and then she falls back into her hibernation. And he's like, well, they ditched me. They hate me. Everything's terrible. Instead of just assuming that he doesn't know the new plans. So just, call them with your cell phone. So he gets all moody and shouts at the city and then falls from on top of the S.H.I.E.L.D. base. And during his fall, he's transported back in time. It's very vague on to where. Within the canon of the show, it says, oh, the Enforcers, which it was cool seeing the Enforcers from the comics and basically a recreation of that really early comic cover. But he was like, I haven't fought these guys since before S.H.I.E.L.D. But then there were also references while he was swinging to the 1960s Spider-Man animated show, because he's through both the way that he's swinging back and forth, and him going, man, I feel like I've swung past this same street dozens of times, like an endless loop. Maybe it's just deja vu. Making fun of the stock Spider-Man swinging animation from the 1960s. And there are also some shots very reminiscent of the 90s show in there. So exact timeline, a little unclear, but whatever. I guess that's fun enough, I guess. And then he's transported back to the present to fight Shocker again, and the fight goes basically the same. And then he's transported to the future after he decides he's done being Spider-Man, and he sees that Green Goblin has become the Goblin King and killed all of the Avengers, including Thor, and can now wield Thor's hammer. Now, if none of this makes any sense, that's because it doesn't. And certainly while I was watching it, I was like, none of this makes any sense. The whole thing, as I suppose I should have known from the title, is a massive dream/illusion from Nightmare, an enemy of Doctor Strange who lives in the dream dimension, who was trying to warp Spider-Man's fears to give himself power to come to the mortal world. Okay, it doesn't make much more sense that way, but at least the stuff that blatantly doesn't make sense, like Green Goblin killing Thor and using Thor's hammer, makes more sense because it didn't really happen. Now, the whole thing is kind of framed around, oh, people take Spider-Man for granted or aren't appreciative of the good things that he does, and he's frustrated with this. Like, his friends leave him before he can get home because he took time to stop Shocker from robbing the place. Then when he's transported back to fight the Enforcers, we see how it actually went the first time, where they got away because he ran out of web fluid, and everyone was like, "Boo, Spider-Man, let them get away, wham!" And then it kind of twists on itself, and in the dream, Spider-Man is able to actually have his web fluid back, so he's able to chase them down and stop them, but the truck goes out of control somehow, unclear, and he ends up accidentally driving it off of a bridge, and I guess the implication there is that the people would still blame him for that going wrong, because the whole message that Nightmare is trying to get across to him is that no matter what he does, people will be unappreciative. And I'm like, okay, I can kind of get behind this messaging. It's almost like a twist on Christmas Carol, where Scrooge decides, hey, I'm gonna do good, and everyone's super appreciative of it. But on the flip side, Spider-Man constantly decides, hey, I'm going to do good, I'm going to do the right thing, but is constantly berated and hated by the Daily Bugle with Jonah Jameson, by the police, by crowds of people in New York. So it's an interesting twist of hey, still choosing to do the right thing even when you're not appreciative for it. But then it cuts back to the present, and it has him do the Shocker fight over again, which he won that fight very quickly. He did one move and Shocker was done, and no one was around the first time to be unappreciative of him. And even if you say, oh, it's the friends leaving, that doesn't exactly change, or they don't do anything with that in the dream sequence. And then when they go to the future, it shows that Goblin King has taken over. Why would Nightmare do that if you wanted to have a scenario where Spider-Man actually quits being Spider-Man? Is that what he really wanted? This episode left me with a lot of questions. I kind of went in hoping for seeing the past, present, and future of Spider-Man. I was like, oh, if we're going to the past, and it referenced, I saw online reference the 60s show. I was like, yes, great, do it in that animation style, that's so fun. And then the future of Spider-Man, I was like, oh, we could do Spider-Man 2099, like the character that's going to appear in the next Into the Spider-Verse movie. That sounds like it could be fun. But instead they just kind of went with a whole mishmash of a lot, with, I think, the message supposed to be, keep doing the right thing even if you're unappreciated for it. But there's just not enough actual substance to the idea. So, sorry to be a Scrooge about this episode, but, yeah, wasn't for me. I'm probably never going to watch that again. Although it did have Nightmare being voiced by Mark Hamill. That's fun. Seeing Mark Hamill in Christmas special outside of Star Wars is always amusing. I get a chuckle out of it. Just going, man, you're brave to ever appear in anything with Christmas in the title ever again. If you want to see me talk about a better Christmas episode with superheroes and Mark Hamill voicing the villain, there's Christmas with a Joker from Batman the Animated Series that you can check out right there. Otherwise, there's some other stuff right over here. Thank you very much for watching. Bah humbug to Ultimate Spider-Man, I guess. I remember enjoying the show as kind of a young teen, but yeah, this episode was not good.